Jesus and the 12 left the shores of the western sea, and after preaching in many places, came to the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus and 7 of the envoys took ship with Nathanael's brother and passed over into Dalmanutha. About this time, Herod Antipas heard about the activities of Jesus, whose fame had spread, for he was unlike the other teachers. A rumor had started that he was John of the wilderness raised to life, and this explained his powers. For only in one able to come back from the dead could such an abundance of power manifest. Most thought he was one of the old prophets returned, but were unable to explain his powers. Though these things brought fear to Herod's heart, he took no action. Others said, "The same is Jesus, who was born Joshua, the son of Joseph and Mary, claiming to be a summoner, dedicating people to serve the cause of God, that a kingdom under his rule may come to earth." When the boat carrying Jesus and the 7 with him came to the shore, it was drawn up near to some women who were washing, and one shouted, "Glory to God, and blessed be the one through whom he manifests." Jesus said, "Glory is not yours to give, neither does the source of glory need it. Therefore your words are empty of meaning. Give service instead." Another woman cried out, "Blessed are the breasts that suckled you." Jesus answered, "The blessed are those who hear the words of God's messenger and obey them." Passing along the beach, Jesus and 3 disciples came to where a group of people stood, and they were of those who walked in the light of the law, but they were self-deceivers who trimmed the lamp to suit their convenience. One said, "If you are really sent from God, show us some sign as proof. Then we can believe what you say." Jesus said, "Why are you always demanding proof? Certainly this generation is undeserving of proof. If you are invited to dine with a man, do you ask him to prove his food is good? If you were genuine, my words would strike a responsive chord in your hearts, and you would know. If I drew aside the curtains to reveal the glory that is heaven, and you believed, would your belief bear the fruit of goodness? It would be like unseasoned timber or untempered iron." The crowd started to gather, and Jesus returned to the boat. And as people began to jostle him, he ordered it to be taken out a little way. As he was getting into it, a scribe pushed forward, saying, "Let me join you, and I will follow wherever you go." Jesus said, "Foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the servant of man has nowhere to lay his head. Not even a board is offered to him here. If you are sincere in your offer, then let this be the place of your labors." Another man with him said, "Then let me come, but may I first have time to bury my father?" Jesus answered, "What service can the living render the dead? Leave the dead to their own kind." The boat was taken to another place. Then it was discovered that, as no bread had been obtained previously, there was insufficient to provide a good meal for everyone. While they were arguing about how it should be distributed, Jesus said, "Let those who get some take care their piece does not contain the leaven of the Perishim or of Herod." Jesus, seeing they looked blankly at him, said, "Do you not understand? When wholesome, even a morsel of bread will nourish. But if it contains bad leaven to turn it sour, it will be bitter in the mouth and nourish no one. 11 out of 12 among the Perishim are good, but it is the bad who contaminate the whole and leave a bitter taste in the mouth." When the boat drew into the shallows, some of those with Jesus went to get food, and a crowd gathered about him. So Jesus told a parable often repeated. A sower went into his cornfield, carrying seed in his apron, and he scattered it about, so some fell in the open and was eaten by the birds. Other seed fell on stony ground and sprouted quickly, but as it could not put down good roots, it quickly withered. So some fell among thistles, where it was smothered before reaching maturity. Still others fell on good ground, and having ripened, produced a bountiful harvest. This parable is simple to understand, and I will explain it to you. I am the sower, and the seeds are my words. Some of you standing here in the open listen, but close your hearts to the message. With you, my words are like the seed eaten by the birds. With others, my words are like the seed falling on stony ground, for though they receive them hopefully, they are weak-willed and shallow-minded. Thus, when their belief is tested, they give way immediately. Still others receive my words, but the message is like the seed sown among thistles. They hear and understand, but because of their daily cares or a craving for worldly things, the words of the message become overgrown and perish. Lastly, there are those who hear the words of the message and welcome them. It is in these that the bountiful harvest is produced. A man nearby in the crowd said, "No doubt you are a worthy teacher, but we have the teachings of the prophets and the law of Moses. Are these not good?" Jesus answered, "Certainly these are good. but what too many make of them is not good. There are many among you who know the teachings of the great souls, but though words issue from your mouths, your hearts are evil. Yet you cannot hide this underlying impurity, for whatever is stored in the heart colors what issues from the mouth. Words from a pure heart are good, but words from a befouled one are evil. I tell you that not one reckless or inconsiderate word is spoken, which does not enter into the accounting. Out of your own mouths will come the words assigning you to the place of glory or to the place of purification. Now those who had gone to obtain food having returned, Jesus and those with him sat around and began to eat. One of the Parashim who stood nearby expressed surprise that he let his disciples eat without first washing their hands, though there was plenty of water beside them. Jesus said, "This is typical of many today. You carefully clean your eating utensils and choose the best food. But these are external things and obvious. Inside you are filled with greed and deceit. Never mind outward appearances, but make sure you are clean all the way through. I assure you of this, everything that is hidden will one day be revealed, and every secret thing will be made known. The words spoken in darkness will be heard in the light of day, and what has been whispered behind closed doors will be shouted from the housetops." Turning to his disciples sitting about him, Jesus said, "Do not be afraid of these people. The worst they can do is to drive the life from your body. If you must be afraid of anything, let it be your own frailties, for if you give in to these, you suffer it long after the body has fallen apart. Are not 5 sparrows sold for a single coin? Yet each one is known to God. For nothing living does not participate in life, and this is maintained by the Holy Spirit. For just as fish live in the waters of the sea, so are men maintained in the living Spirit." Speaking to those who had spoken previously, Jesus said, "Woe to you self-deceivers, who are false interpreters of the law. You are like unmarked graves which men walk over in innocence, unaware they are being defiled. Yet nothing from outside can ever enter into a man and sully his soul. It is what festers within him which comes out to reveal his uncleanness. The things which defile a man, such as fornication, malice, envy, obscenity, and adultery, come from a weeping ulcer within the mind. The uncleanness within a man is like a stone dropped in water, the ripples going out from him to contaminate others. To all outward appearances, many of you live good lives, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and deceit. You erect memorials over the graves of those who spoke with the voice of God, and decorate the monuments of the martyrs who died unjustly. You say, 'Had we lived in those times, we would never have done the things our forefathers did.' But do you take care to ensure your children never have cause to say the same about you? Therefore, do not set your standards by those days, but according to the better ones in the days of your children." One of the people who were there said, "We have heard that you teach the coming rule of God and claim knowledge of the kingdom of heaven. Tell us about these things." Jesus said, "The rule of God is not something which will come suddenly, nor will it bring about a violent change. It is not a change of surroundings, but a change of heart. The change conditions will be brought about by changes in the heart. No man can say, 'It is here,' or 'It is there.' It is here, but waiting recognition. Just as others have heralded my coming, so do I herald the coming rule of God. But its establishment does not depend on anything done by God, but on the actions of men. The kingdom of heaven is where God rules in spirit. But there is that within each man which can extend the kingdom of heaven. When this is drawn out of men while they are on earth and established here, then the kingdom of heaven will embrace the earth. When the rule of God is established on earth, then will the kingdom of heaven come down, so heaven and earth are united in one." A rich man standing by said, "We cannot understand these things, and they just confuse us. Just tell me what I must do to enjoy eternal life." Jesus said, "By your attire you are among those privileged to enjoy wealth. What do you do with it?" The man replied, "I do as others, getting the most out of it and enjoying life to the full." Jesus said, "You would be better off selling all your possessions and giving your proceeds to the poor. Only thus can you discover yourself and benefit from eternal life." The rich man's companion said, "Wise teacher, what of me? I conform to every verse of the law. I pray every day and give generously to the poor." Jesus said, "Have you ever been hungry, or slept on the streets, or gone unclothed?" The man said, "No, why should I?" Jesus said, "You deceive yourself, and are a hypocrite besides. How can you say you comply with the law and teachings of the prophets? Is it not stated in the law that you should love your neighbor as yourself? Yet all about you there are people who are hungry, clothed in rags, and homeless. Your house is filled with good things, far exceeding your moderate needs, and all you hand out are a few coins and a morsel of food. It is the duty and obligation of such as you to see no man suffers hunger and privation in your neighborhood. Turning to a disciple sitting at his side, Jesus said, Simon, son of Joanna, let this be your teaching. It is easier for a camel to enter into the city by the needle's eye than for a rich man to enter into the glory of heaven. The rich away and left. And another who was there said, Sire, just what is meant by my neighbor? Jesus then told this parable. A man had found it necessary to travel the road to Jericho, going from Jerusalem. Along the way he was attacked by footpads, who stripped him naked, beat him up, and after taking all he possessed, left him half dead by the roadside. A short time later, a priest came along the same road, and seeing the injured man lying there, passed by on the other side, for he feared defilement. Another self-righteous man came along, but hastened by, thinking, I would help if I could, but he is nearly dead, and I am no physician. Better for me to push on and tell someone. A merchant came by alone, but seeing the man lying there, thought, Perhaps the robbers are still around, and I should not dismount. Besides, I wear fine clothes which would be spoiled. Now a lowly Samaritan traveling the same road came upon the man lying there, and his heart was moved with pity. So he tore strips off his tunic and bound the injured man's wound. Then, lifting the man, he set him on his own ass, bringing him to an inn and attending to his needs. When departing the next morning, he said to the innkeeper, Here is some silver. Look after this man. If the payment is insufficient, I will settle the bill on my way back. Which of these four, in your opinion, acted as a neighbor should towards the helpless man? The man who had questioned Jesus said, Why, surely the man who took compassion on the stricken man. Jesus said, Now you know your neighbor. Go and act likewise towards men. Leaving that place, Jesus and those with him went by boat to another shore on the Sea of Galilee, arriving on the morning of the Sabbath. As Jesus was going into the place of worship, a woman bent double without the ability to straighten herself came and begged Jesus to heal her. He put one hand upon her chin and the other on her back and straightened her up, and she went away filled with happiness. The Levite who conducted the worship noticed this, and seeing the woman inside, said to her, 6 days are set aside for work, but the Sabbath is sacred, and you should not have sought healing on that day. Jesus, overhearing this, waited outside for the Levite, and when he came out, said, What a hypocrite you are! What member of your flock does not loose his cattle or ass from their stalls and water them on the Sabbath? Also, are the cows not milked and the hogs fed? They are not left to suffer, yet you would deny relief to this poor woman because it is the Sabbath? Hearing this, many of the people supported Jesus, and he preached to them. A blind man was brought to Jesus while he preached. He took the blind man apart from the crowd, and moistening his thumbs, drew them across the blind man's eye. The man gave a sudden cry and screwed up his eyes, but Jesus said, Open your eyes and tell me what you see. The man did so and said, I can just tell it is light, but cannot distinguish anything. Jesus then covered the man's eyes with his hands, and after withdrawing them said, What do you see now? The man replied, O sire, I can see everything, though it is not steady. Sometimes later, the envoys who had been away rejoined Jesus, bringing with them a disciple who had deserted Jesus in Endor. He was named Barnabas, and seeing him, Jesus was overcome with joy and welcomed him warmly. Whereupon 2 of those who had come with him went aside and were sullen, for they had not been received in this manner. Calling the 22 men who were with him, Jesus addressed them as follows. A man had 2 sons, and one day the youngest came to him and said, Father, I want to go away from here. Therefore give me the inheritance which would one day be mine, so I can take it with me. So the father divided his estate and gave the younger man his portion. This was then sold, and the youngest son departed to a distant city where he dissipated the money on women and riotous living. After his money had gone, he found that no one wanted to know him, and soon he was completely destitute. No work being available for him in the city, he went outside, but the only job he could obtain was that of swineherd. Often, when he saw the pigs gorging themselves, his own stomach aching with hunger, he would think, If only I could bring myself to eat this pig swill, it would ease my hunger. What a fool I have been, for here I am worse off than any of my father's employees. I will go back to him, admitting my failure as a son, for he never withheld anything from me, and let me go my own way, when this was what I wanted. So he set off and returned to his father's estate. His father saw him coming while he was still afar off, And seeing his son footsore and weary, the father's heart was lifted with compassion, and he ran out to meet him and embraced him warmly. The son was stricken with remorse and said, "Father, I have done wrong, but will do my best to make amends. I am unworthy to be treated as a son, but let me work for you as a servant." But the father led him home and called out to the servants, "Here is my son. Bring him a change of clothing. Get a ring for his hand and sandals for his feet. Go and kill the fattening calf and roast it. For we are going to celebrate his return with a feast. I thought my son was lost, but he has returned, and I am happy." Now the elder son had been out in the fields all day, and drawing close to the house at dusk, he was puzzled to hear the sounds of music and laughter. Passing one of the servants, he inquired what it was about, and the servant replied, "Your father has ordered a celebration for the safe return of your brother." This made the eldest son so angry that he would not go into the house. And when his father came out to see why, the son said, "Over the years I have served you faithfully, and you know you can rely on me. Yet you have never even put on a feast of goat meat for me and my friends. Now this prodigal comes returning back because he has squandered everything on harlots and gambling, and you immediately have a great feast of celebration." The father said, "My son, you are my right hand, and I know you have never let me down. I depend on you, and all I have is yours. But it is a special occasion, for the one I thought was lost to me has returned. This does not lessen my affection and regard for you, but he is weak and needs support, while you are strong and do not require such displays of affection." Jesus put his arms around the two disciples and said, "My friends, when the going gets tough and the road is long, some collapse by the wayside. It is these who need encouragement. It is not always easy to admit failure. When a sheep becomes separated from the flock and is lost among the thorn bushes, does not a good shepherd leave the rest and go in search of the one which has gone astray? This does not mean he loves it more than the others, nor does it lessen his love for each of them." It was some days later at another place that a follower named Joseph said to Jesus, "Sire, if a man cheat another, is he punished for the cheating or for the harm he has done to the other man?" Jesus said, "Speak of punishment only to the people, for this accords with their understanding. On earth, men's deeds are weighed on scales between reward and punishment, but these work inaccurately. In the kingdom of the Spirit, the measure of assessment is a man's earthly life. You are now on the balances. Do not be found wanting." A man who can be trusted in small matters can also be trusted with great things. The man whose transgressions are petty would commit much greater ones if given the opportunity, or if he had greater courage. The purpose of life is to establish a man's credentials, for if he is found unreliable in dealing with things of this world, which quickly pass on the wings of day, how can he be trusted with things of glory in the kingdom of heaven? For glory is the garment with which each of one who comes into the kingdom of heaven will be clothed, and each one who comes will be given attire and station according to the credentials established on earth. These and many other things were taught to the disciples by Jesus, but only one recorded them.